Good morning. Yes, this is Let's Talk Radical Radio, getting to the root causes of the important issues of the day. This on-the-air community forum believes your voice matters and welcomes all thoughts and views without judgment. Not too much anyway. Please join today's conversation by calling 415-663-8492 or 8317, because we might get some calls today, or tweet us at Let's Talk on KWMR.
And your hosts today are Paul Raffel leading our conversation, me, Robin Carpenter, answering the phones, and the wonderful Mr. Steve Horowitz.
Yes.
I'm supposed to say this.
Yeah,
when you call in and hear the phone ringing, please hang on. When you hear me say you're on the air, please give us your first name, turn down your radio, and watch your language, particularly in such heated times as these days.
No one calls me mother except no one calls me wonderful except my mother.
No, Steve, you're amazing. You've been doing such great work, and I know you're going to be recognized even more and more for it.
Amazing. The word of the decade.
Oh, my gosh.
Totally amazing. Anyway.
What's our topic today?
Today, we are talking about what are we supposed to do now. I was really hoping that we would have a show that was not about the current administration. But as every day goes by and there's another edict sent down from above and another weird and dangerous choice for cabinet positions and Muslim bans, and if we
trade
can call
wars.
it a Muslim ban,
wars.
I don't know if we can call it a Muslim ban. That's a slanted view.
But Trump says it's a ban,
right.
And Spicer says it's not a ban.
Rudy
and then
Giuliani says it's a ban.
And the people who read the report say, "Oh, it's not a ban. The media shouldn't call it a ban." And then I would say, "Well, if the president calls it a ban, isn't it a ban?"
Exactly. So these are the kinds of things. What do you do when all this stuff is coming down the tube and you're supposed to do something about it? What can you do? What do you ignore? What do you just say? You know, at some point you're going to say, okay, the truth doesn't matter anymore. Facts are alternative. There are alternative facts. How do you go forward and try to
personally
fight? Not the right word because that's violence. But how do you go against this and try and keep sanity?
Personally, I found God.
Uh-oh. Where'd you find him?
God's been getting us into a lot of trouble lately.
The latest is he wants to revoke the requirement that churches cannot be political. What they call the Johnson Amendment comes from Lyndon Johnson. Now he wants to make it possible for churches to be political.
Now, it's very interesting, Stephen, because coming, as I always say, from the Deep South, and I visit there quite a bit, churches have been, especially in the Deep South, political for decades.
Yeah, sure.
When I was down there working for the DNC in Orlando, Florida, for the Carrie Edwards campaign, that I went to my sister's church, which was not a hardcore Baptist evangelical church. I think it's a Methodist church. And they had buses every day available because they had early voting in Florida. And they were talking about, you had to vote for Bush. The preacher was saying, get on the bus, get out there and vote for the man who believes the things that we believe in. And I've seen that time and time again. And I've also seen it as well in African-American churches were talking about voting for the Democrat. So churches, and I remember I was so shocked because I'd never really seen it in my own particular. As Episcopalians, we just promote good liquor, being on time for tee off or golf, but not really out
Fine
here.
British tradition.
But
certainly KWMR cannot endorse a candidate and cannot say go out and vote for somebody as a nonprofit.
Yeah, I think nonprofits are allowed to have 10% of their resources that they can advocate for someone if that person is someone who's going to be helpful toward, like, as a literacy program, if we wanted to advocate for, we have a governor who's against teaching people to read and one who wants people to read. But you cannot devote it, something like 10 or 15% of your resources, which means time and or money, cannot go towards advocacy. I mean, that much can go towards advocacy, but you're not supposed to be. And I think it may only be. I'm trying to remember because we had looked at advocating for some particular legislation that was going to help with library funding. So I don't know. I mean, Steve, when did that's really
Just
today's
happened
news?
today.
wow. This morning.
There's another one coming down the pipe. You just go.
Well, and I woke up this morning and somebody had sent me a video of the former President Vicente Fox of Mexico basically telling Trump, do you understand you've just declared a trade war? You're going around breaking the world, and you need to stop this and grow up and be a man.
Well, who are we really dealing with anymore? I mean, Trump is signing everything that's put in front of him, but who's putting it in front of him? I think we know that there are other forces involved who are not elected and who just happen to be his consiglieri. And
so I just want to remind everybody, you can call us at 415-663-8492. Perhaps how you might want to cope is to vent with us.
Please give us advice on how to go forward, what to concentrate on in the upcoming 4 years, and what can we safely ignore? Do we put up a fight about this Supreme Court nominee who happens to be one of the most respected judicial minds anywhere? Those two, Garrick. Oh
my gosh, my mind.
Merrick Garland.
Merrick Garland.
And this guy Gorsuch are the two top intellectuals in the legal system, and so they were kind of cut from the same cloth, except that they're
Clerk for Justice Kennedy
on other sides.
Well, and Gorsuch is very. He is very pro-life in the way that he's written. He hasn't specifically talked about abortion, but he's anti.
For example,
suicide.
do we spend a lot of energy trying to keep him from being put in place, or do we say, well, I guess that's going to happen. We're going to have to deal with it. I mean,
let's see what this caller has to say. Caller, you're on the air.
Hi, my name's Colin, and I'm in Inverness Park.
Hi, Colin. Welcome.
Thank you. Hey, regarding Neil Gorsuch, I think I'm not so sure about that one. I've heard and read both sides about whether Democrats should, oppose him at all costs or not. So I don't have a clear answer on that. But the reason I called was just to put it out there to local folks that there is a local organization forming. I don't know if you guys are probably aware of it, or maybe you plan to mention it, called the sort of Westmoreland Resist Trump.
Oh, I'm so glad you called, because we did want to cover that I think being gone kind of got the ball rolling, and you had 80 people at your first meeting.
That's right, yeah. Well, I went to what was sort of I think that was the second meeting that had 80 people. There was a previous one that did a little organizational work. But I was at the second one. There was lots of people, and I was really impressed with the level of organization and the intelligent discussion and the commitment of people to work together and share ideas and resources for how we here in our local area can work on local issues that'll make a difference, and also join with other national groups to fight for peace and planet.
Yeah, it's a great
meeting. The next meeting for that group is February 11th at 3 p.m. at the Dance Palace.
Excellent.
Great. And will you guys make sure that's also in the Point Racelight calendar? You probably already have, but if that would be good too, to have that. Ask Tuss and David over there if they could put that in the calendar, that meeting.
And we broke into committees, which was great, because we divided up the attention towards different specific subjects. I'm on the Writers and Artists Committee.
I was going to ask about that. I've been getting the emails from Bing, and then I got an email from Mary Olson that there's going to be a Writers and Artists Committee, because for me, Colin, I've done a lot of sort of just straightforward activist work or working for a campaign, and I really feel like I emotionally need to return to how can I be more creative, because I feel like my warrior energy's sort of worn down, but maybe my writer-artist energy would serve better than my currently very strident stance as a warrior, that maybe my creative juices. So, Colin, what was your take on how the group sort of helped people find the place that they could be the most comfortably effective?
Well, yeah, there was a sort of an open discussion of other committees that could be added, and everyone got to have their voice, and then people, broke up into groups, and in a way, I think it's still the early days of the organization, so people are still finding their way. I sat with the Climate and Environmental Protection Committee, and I feel, pretty inspired, and I don't know, I was just impressed. Like, I feel like I stay pretty informed, and a lot of times I end up talking to people who I'm kind of feel like I'm catching them up on what's going on, but in this West Marin group, I felt like nobody needed to be caught up to what was going on. Everybody was very aware and informed and educated and had good ideas. So, I'm not an integral part of the group at this point. I just wanted to make sure that the meeting and the opportunity was mentioned on this.
Yeah, that's great. I think it's wonderful that the locals are coming together and with some energy right now. Let's hope we can sustain it. Are you going to sustain it, Susan?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Until the next time.
Thanks for the great conversation. I'll listen to the rest.
Thank you, Colin.
Thanks for calling.
Yeah, do call in 415-663-8492 and let us know what your plans are for, shall we call it resistance? I don't know. That's kind of the phrase, but that's the word that we're using. So in your Writers and Artists Committee, what it's all about reaching out to publishing your opinions in the media?
There was nothing specific that people agreed on, but we're meeting on Tuesday. I think there'll be more specific things that we'll be talking about. It's not like we're all ready to just rush out the door and do something. So
it's going to take big planning. And is there a committee for finding better representatives?
Something. We're so lucky out in California, though.
Yeah.
I'm looking. I looked at the list. I said, "Okay, whose door do we stand in front of?" I'm going, "Wow, they're all Democrats."
I know. Well, that's part of the thing. I mean, we are in Marin County.
Right.
Our representatives are pretty on the same page as most of us, I think.
And even in the state.
So what do you do?
Yeah.
But one thing that's interesting.
Do you call them every day and say, "Hey, Jared"?
Well, two things. One, there is an app where you can find out where the closest swing election is, like a county, like Merced County or some of the counties down in the valley where there are going to be tight elections. So find something that's close enough to you, and then whoever is the progressive candidate or the candidate you'd like to support, contact them and see, what can I do? Can I do some fundraising here for you? Can I come on the weekends and do phone calls? But that's one thing that you can do. That's why I used to go down to the South and work for the DNC before I saw the mess that they had become. But I'd go work in a southern state, and I'd always take vacation time around the presidential election, so I could go do that. So I think that's one thing, is find out where is an area that you can make a difference. I know people have been posting for Republicans they think might go against Deborah Voss, who's been put up for Secretary of Education, and that if you know people in, say, I think Tennessee, Georgia, some of the places they think that might have an impact, if you have any friends or relatives there, to contact them. So there are those ways, I think, to make a difference. And also what's been happening is with the Gorsuch issue is that the Democrats are getting pressure from their constituents going, you guys have you guys have been too nice, and we want you to stop it. So, but there are people like Peter Prowse, who has represented a lot of local farmers, and he represents Oyster Farm, and he has represented a lot of people in agriculture here. He believes that we should not pull our filibuster out right now, that just let Gorsuch go in. He's not going to be any farther to the right than Scalia.
Yeah, because Kennedy's the next one, right? He's 81, 82 or something.
They're thinking Kennedy may really relax and retire if Gorsuch comes in. But then Trump even said, we don't have to do the 60 votes to have a Supreme Court justice go in. Let's just go nuclear and just go 51 votes and they're in. Because at this point, it looks like we could make it where they don't have 60 votes. So it's
the nuclear option.
Yeah. So it's really interesting
it.
because it looks like Trump's pushing break all the rules, change the rules, just like they did with that rule where you have to have a minority member to vote on certain issues for staff replacement. And so the Democrats decide, well, we won't show up for the meeting, so they can't vote because they have to have a minority member. And they went, yeah, well, screw that. We're going to vote anyway.
Yeah.
So
well, you're in the minority. We don't need you. Bye.
I don't know. How do you guys
So how
feel about
do you
that?
fight that? What can we do if we call ourselves Democrats? Which how do you fight that when you're minority everywhere in the legislation?
I would say a boycott in the legislature I think it's an unwise move.
I mean, well, one thing that I know, because I do have a lot of friends who are Republicans and conservatives, and I know a number of people who voted for Trump, and they were very angry at the Tea Party and the freezing of the government during the 8 years of Obama. They felt like they were lazy and didn't do their job, so they weren't happy about that. But they still
voted them in.
Well,
again.
They didn't feel like voting for Trump to them was not voting for the Republican Party or the Tea Party.
Really?
No. For them, voting for Trump was their protest vote to say, But now another thing that's been coming up is that all of us being so schadenfreude about well, look what you got now, is we should be pulling together everyone who is horrified by the Trump-Bannon presidency.
Absolutely.
We should be reaching out. We shouldn't be,
if they're horrified. As far as I can tell so far, they're pretty much saying, the Republicans are in.
But your attitude
this is what the Republicans are doing, is they're saying, hey, we don't like him, but we're going to go along because we've got everything we want. We've got the Congress,
all I'm saying is
Senate,
if we keep shaming,
Not shaming, I'm just stating facts here, real facts.
As progressives, we have made people feel, and as the Democratic Party, we made people feel bad. We had union households that had been fifth-generation Democrats voting for Trump. So there's something we're doing wrong, too.
Of course.
So we're doing something wrong. And I think that we need – and the thing is, if the progressives and the Democratic Party and the people opposing Trump – don't find some leadership to pull us all together and to stop the blaming. And it wasn't James Comey, and it wasn't, this or that or Putin or whatever. We have to stop that and take a look at how dysfunctional the Democratic Party is, and that do we even want to do things under the guise of the Democratic Party?
Are you saying that the Democrats need to drain their own swamp?
Yes, I am,
Absolutely.
Mr. Hurwitz, and you coined that. When you said that, I was like, yes, we've got some of the biggest gators going in our swamp. So,
like when they put Nancy Pelosi back in. Come on.
You put the
talk
same
about the stalwarts of the old Democratic Party that just lost big time.
That lost everything. They lost,
and have lost everything over the past 6 years, right?
Yeah. I mean, we have nothing. And they still consider this, Hillary won the popular vote. Let's get real. We lost the Senate. We lost the House. It's
So
we're in trouble.
Well, you know what I noticed just in the last election? You had Democrats who were afraid to be Democrats. They were in these conservative locations. They refused to have Obama campaign with them. Big mistake. And they seemed like they were going to try and pacify all these conservatives. Nobody respects somebody who's trying to be who they aren't.
And I think that's a real. There's a hypocrisy. There's a hypocrisy of the DNC. And when I was doing the Carrie Edwards campaign, I was doing polling in African American neighborhoods, and these were people that were not going to vote for the Democratic candidate. They were going to vote for George Bush, and many of them had voted for George Bush against Al Gore. And the Democratic operatives running the office in Orlando, because it was a key office, and John Kerry was there every other day. They stayed in this upper loft area. The place had been an old warehouse of some kind with their door locked. We weren't allowed to speak to them. When we tried to give them reports saying we're in deep deep caca here, because we're talking to these people, and they talked about Clinton put our sons in prison. He screwed up the welfare system, you know, and
they built their little dynasties, and they want to hang on to it, and people are tired of that. And
Paul,
in both parties.
Paul, you asked where we go from here.
Yes,
and I would just like to call people's attention to something I came across. It's called indivisibleguide.com. It's an extraordinary guide to action. And essentially, though, I'm just going to break it down into one idea, and that is follow the guide of what the Tea Party did. If we can replicate the Tea Party, we might win the same way.
Working at local levels. Yes, call all the time, just badgering your representatives.
Oh, and showing up
sure
for meetings. Because there were several House of Representatives members that said the most impactful thing for them is when people show up at their town halls and their meetings and grill them. That's what really, if you can show up for any meetings, and you can also show up for meetings for someone that you didn't necessarily vote for or support, but show up for those meetings and ask the hard questions.
Especially the people you didn't support.
Yeah.
So part of that, part of Indivisible, which was part of the inspiration for the local Resist Trump movement. Key strategic choices, 2 key strategic choices. Locally focused, started as a movement built on small local groups of dedicated conservatives, and they would talk to each other online, organize online. They were small and local. They would attend every town hall meeting. Any time an elected official came to town, they were there and very vocal. And they were almost purely defensive. The Tea Party focused on saying no to members of Congress on their home turf. They focused on defense, not policy development. They rejected concessions to Democrats and targeted weak Republicans so that they could bring in Tea Party members. Right? I mean, that's the way politics is done now. And maybe it always was. You know, you go to town hall meetings and you make your voice heard. You tick a lot of people off, but you get some things. You get your opinions known, and members of Congress get worried when.
I'd like to know. Do you think Obama put us all to sleep?
I believe that, and first of all, I take a little bit of umbrage with that Tea Party thing, because I believe we need to be putting forth ideas. Because one of the reasons people voted for Trump, because Trump goes, build a wall, lock her up. He starts saying all these action items because people didn't like the gridlock. Right. So I think that the gridlock people were tired of. I believe, now one of the things that is a real sticking point for us to be able to sway or to get in a relationship with someone who was and maybe still is a Trump supporter, is that we have to own our own hypocrisy. You know, in my other life, I run the Marin Literacy Program. 90% of our students are immigrants, many of whom are undocumented. And, you know, under Obama, we started deporting the largest number of people deporting to Mexico and Central America massively. I saw the impact on our students. It was so harsh under the Obama administration, and they had no qualms breaking up families. And when Hillary Clinton said send those children back to these Central American countries where their parents sent them here to avoid them being murdered, and said, well, that'll teach those parents to do that. I mean, there is so much that went on in the Obama administration that during the Obama administration, if you opposed Obama as a progressive, oh my God, if I said anything negative Obama out here, I was afraid I was going to get egged.
And now they've deified him.
And now they've deified him. And so you can't have legitimacy when you want to talk about how terrible Trump is when you kept your mouth shut about we were bombing in 9 countries and the thousands of civilian deaths that Obama oversaw. There was so much, and that's, I think it's one of the reasons why I'm able to have some
drone wars,
and I'm able to have some pretty meaty, I think, open conversations with friends and family back in the South. And the media's done a terrible job, too.
Sure.
And, Obama wasn't happy about sanctuary cities. There was a lot of pressure being put on sanctuary cities. And the media has also been at fault during the Obama years because they helped with the coronation and the deification of Obama. And nobody questioned, like the other night I explained to my dad, I said, do you know what a sanctuary city means? And he said, yeah, that you take them all in and you're feeding them and you're giving them free food and clothes and money and blah, blah, blah. And I said, no. He said, that's what they've been saying. And I said, a sanctuary city says we will not use our own local law enforcement to enact immigration policies that are the job of ICE. Yeah. And Dad goes, well, that makes sense. Why should you be spending your money when the feds should be doing their job? You do your job, they do. So my dad was like, well, that makes sense. He goes, that's kind of a Southern thing. Don't let the feds do their job and stay out of my business.
So there's a thing. How do we reach out to these people who voted for Trump and support Trump and still do support Trump, even though they may say, oh, well, he's not doing quite what we thought he was going to do, because they can't be wrong. How do you reach them when all their...
Your attitude towards them is so negative.
Do you reach them? Yeah, really? How do you reach them when all they watch is their TV station and all we watch is our TV station? And
I can tell you how I do. I have a number of friends back from Sandusky, Ohio, where I grew up, who are very conservative and post, and I've kept them as Facebook friends, and they post these little, I don't know, they make these what do you call those things? It's something that's very easy.
Form letter?
It's like a form letter. It's got its graphics, and they just post these, and I look at it as an opportunity. Mm-hmm. It's an opportunity to give. They're mindless. They require no intelligence, and sometimes I go, "Wow, thank you very much." And what I do is I give a different point of view. I look at what it means, and I analyze it. I go online. I come back with something interesting, and then I challenge them. I say, "Listen, this is too easy. You have to give me something that actually requires thought." Not that I get that much, but I think it's a great opportunity to challenge those ideas. They have lots of conservative friends, and they read that.
Facebook is still a good tool for that. But I'm guessing for your example, your dad and the rest of your family are not on Facebook. So how do we reach them?
Yeah, they are. And so I do the same thing. Yeah, he's through his girlfriend. So they share a site. And so one of the things that I did when people were like, I'm unfriending anyone who supports Trump and blah, 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 I'll ask them, and I try not to have an attitude of, you idiots, you did this, and, you're so stupid and you only watch Fox, because that's how they feel they are viewed by Democrats and by liberals. So I try to have, like, if someone posts something and goes, oh, this or that, or all Mexicans are rapists, then I try to do the same thing, Steve. I try to say, actually, if you didn't know this, that undocumented workers in America put approximately $20 billion a year into Social Security funds that they never get back. And we would lose that. So if they're using $5 billion of services in America, we're making a profit of $15 billion. And they're like, really? Where did you hear that? And because I've tried to be open to them all along, and because during the past 8 years they've seen me criticize Obama, they believe me. They know I'm not going to lie. And so then I'll post like, okay, this economist here had these figures. And so I
you
think
give them
that's another
facts.
way. Yeah.
And what happens? They say, "Oh, thanks," or do they just go?
No, they've been really, and especially the sanctuary city thing, that's spread around, and they're like,
well, that's very positive. I love it. This is KWMR.
That's
90.5 Point Reyes Station, and 89.9 Bolinas, and 92.3 in San Geronimo Valley, streaming online at kwmr.org and on Horizon Cable Channel 47. And this is Let's Talk. Please give us a call at 415-663-8492.
And speaking of great information, have you been to KWMR's website lately? It's brand new for 2017 with a fresh look, a user-friendly format, and a new feature called Tip This Show, where you can make a donation to a specific show. You can check it all out at kwmr.org. We would also like to thank some of our underwriters, which includes the Bolinas Hearsay News. Programming on KWMR is brought to you by the Bolinas Hearsay News, serving the Bolinas community since 1974. Information at 868-0138 during office and publishing hours, 9 a.m. to 12 noon on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. The Bolinas Hearsay News is available at most downtown Bolinas businesses. And we have one more underwriter back on the last page. The fabulous Toby's Feed Barn, programming on KWMR, is underwritten by Toby's Feed Barn on Main Street in Point Reyes Station, offering hay and feed, garden supplies, gifts, fresh bread and produce, and fine art in Toby's Gallery. Toby's is home to the community garden, Toby's Coffee Bar, Yoga Toe Studio, and the Saturday Farmers Market during the summer. And you're listening to Let's Talk Radio, and we are discussing what's next. What are you going to do? What do you think is the appropriate steps to move forward? And we have a caller. Caller, you're on the air.
Hi, Robin. This is Gail.
Hi, Gail.
Harold.
Hi, how are you
Hi,
doing?
Gail.
Everybody there?
Yes.
Great job.
The gang's all here.
Mm-hmm. So I had two comments. One was I was just remembering, after your comment on the news and different resources that people listen to, we had a conversation with a cousin at a family reunion. It was a young man from Chicago, and he laid out this incredibly clear case that said, this is all Obama's fault. He's done nothing but divide us since he came into office, and he laid out a series of complaints. And I just remember stopping and saying, we should be listening to each other's news sources, because I would say the exact same thing about Republicans. And I think we all have to become a lot more sensitive to and attuned to the prejudice, the propaganda on both sides, because we're just all so uninformed. It's pretty hard to know how to go forward accurately, or how to find a middle ground, when one subset of people are listening to one set of news and the other is from a totally different source. So, people have talked about starting to listen to Fox News or check out some of these things again, more like, Stephen and you talking about staying connected to people with different viewpoints, because the gap is astonishing, and this fake news thing is really just doing nothing but stirring it up.
Mm-hmm.
And Gail, that's really interesting, because I know during the election season, I was watching Fox, MSNBC, and CNN, which kind of covers left, sort of middle, right. And it was, the one thing that was notable was they all were doing 70% of their shows on Trump. It was like Trump,
right.
Trump. And
it's a winning strategy, wasn't it?
Oh, it was. And so, but it is very interesting to watch the same story being covered. And what's fascinating to me, since I've been watching Fox now for 14 months, and Andy won't do it with me, my husband. He's like,
I say you've got more patience than me.
Andy's like, I won't do it. But Fox has been coming down on Trump, and they're very negative and concerned about Steve Bannon. They're pretty shocked and nervous about it. So you're starting to see, and I saw an interview with Glenn Beck, who's a conservative host.
Oh yeah,
who's very
he had a come to Jesus moment of some kind,
right.
where he was on Rachel Maddow or something.
There was a big article that the Koch brothers did not agree with his, felt that this was anti-business, and they did not agree with most of his policies, all of his trade deals and all the stuff that he was undoing.
So, Gail, when you guys were talking with this cousin, what was your response as he outlined that? Do you just listen and held a space, or did you have some back and forth?
I listened a lot, and then I said, like I said, we have to listen to each other's news sources, because we both have the completely opposite opinion. And, then we talked a little more about his experience of living in Chicago and the poverty and the violence and the things that he deals with on a day-to-day basis. And, I think mostly I just suggested that we both become a little better informed.
Right.
Because, there wasn't enough time or the situation to really go into that in detail.
But I think that what you and Steve are doing, trying to hold that space, I think it's really important, because there's got to be, if you're in a position where you know those people are there in your lives, then you can be this bridge person, and you can also wake up. I believe that 8 years, as Steve said, of Obama putting us to sleep, and those of us who were saying wake up got attacked by our fellow progressives. And especially with the whole Bernie thing, which I think is a place where those of us who weren't so happy with Obama finally found refuge.
Hillary.
And we got attacked by the Hillary supporters that didn't even want to hear why we weren't for Hillary. And what was interesting to me, too, is being back in the South last year in May before the primaries were over, and so many Republicans supporting Bernie that they would have voted for Bernie. So it would have been a wonderful thing to get to see what would have happened.
So how do we make sure that the Democratic Party becomes more left of center than it currently is?
So can I have one comment is, and I don't know the answer to this, but I know that the progressives are really promoting Ellis for the leader of the party. But there are 10 people running, and I don't, each of them has a short bio, but I don't really know which is the best or which will best represent us or that position in the Democratic Party. And I would love to get better informed, or if anybody knows more about that. I think that's probably a next strategic decision, because it's going to make a big difference on how that's pursued.
That's a very good point.
Incredibly unhappy with the Democrats not holding together, not resisting these cabinet picks. I'm shocked, really. And then, on another front is just to start one strategy I've seen that's been effective in other challenging situations is to start connecting on the issues. There are people who don't want the national parks decimated or destroyed. There are people who don't want, a lot of the things, public education being disappeared, or Social Security, or Obama, affordable care, or anything, that if you start to connect, well, what do you really want out of life? How do you get that? That many times you can form those bridges rather than being liberal or conservative or progressive or whatever.
I think that being sort of a friend of mine who's worked a lot in the food movement, and where you have so many people coming together that are Tea Partiers, Republicans, evangelicals. And she just said, when people ask her, she says, I'm an issue-crat. I pick issues that I think are critical to us, and I pull people together, and I don't care if they're Tea Party or Republican or Democrat or Libertarian. I just care, will they help us fight on this issue?
Right. Do they want clean air? Do they want clean water? Do they want,
Yeah.
Those are easier to agree on.
Yeah, sure. Although, not necessarily, but yeah. But it's certainly worth a try. No, Robin, you think I'm calling people idiots. I'm not calling them idiots, but I do think there's this terrible disconnect in the media that you're a good person, so you watch all sides, but I don't watch TV, but when I do, I watch only MSNBC or, Rachel Maddow comes on, Bill Maher or whatever.
You'd be shocked to know how many alternative programs are in media that are right-wing. Dozens and dozens.
And even I've been listening on and off to Breitbart for years. I guess just because, having worked so much in agriculture and food, where that's an area where we have all these people come together from different places. So, and having family that is conservative and wanting to understand.
You're right. It's important to hear what they're hearing and to be able to actually reference that when
because I can say if somebody says did you know that $5 billion a day is being spent on immigrants on health care, and it's like actually that was an inaccurate report and the real numbers are. So I think that's the other thing too, is there's got to be this combination of rationality and emotional connection, because I think a lot of people who voted for Trump voted from a very emotional place.
It used to be that issues were decided on facts, but,
But I don't know.
Slogans
we like to believe
more powerful, aren't they?
But I think that Americans are very emotional people, and I think that, oh my God, look at all the people who voted for George Wallace or some of the crazy candidates that we've had. So I don't know that we have a history of voting on facts. Right.
Well, the one thing that the Republicans have always been good at is, and the right wing has been good at, is their little catchphrases like pro-life instead of anti-abortion, like the moral majority. You remember that one?
Yeah.
And it just became part of our everyday speech. When their own names for themselves that are good branding become part of the language, they're winning. That's it.
So
we have to come up with better branding.
I agree.
So, Gail, thank you for joining us. We've got another caller calling in.
Okay. And I put on Twitter the two resources you were looking for. Swingleft.org is the organization that you can connect with, and I put it in your Twitter feed, I think.
Thank you.
I've never done it before, so if it's not there, let me know.
It's not here yet, but maybe
Thanks, Gail.
it'll
And
arrive.
swingleft.org connects the progressive and the conservative district.
What is that one called? Swingleft.org?
Yeah, and I also put in for Ohio, Kansas, Texas, and somebody else for the states that are, have swing that leaning towards against DeVos. That need
Right.
people,
Great.
People there. So thank you very much. Great
Thank
show.
you.
Thank you, Gail.
Thanks for calling.
So we have a new caller calling in. Caller, you're on the air. What's your name?
Sally.
Hi,
Sally.
Sally.
Hello.
Hello. Have you watched Fox
Register
today?
my overwhelm.
You're registering your overwhelm?
I'm registered to vote, and I'm registering my overwhelm. My overwhelm is that there are so many things coming down the pike just within the first 14 days of this. I want to say bad words, and I'm going to restrain myself.
Regime.
Shock and awe.
Puppet show of evil. And it's hard to know what to do with it all. One might think about tuning it out. One might think about just taking a Valium.
Do you have any?
I do. I'm on them now.
Come on by the station with them.
Oh, no, I think we need to be pretty vigilant about, as we do peruse and ingest copious amounts of information out there in the interwebs, we have to be so discerning and vigilant about what's fake and what's, put out as by agents provocateur and
Absolutely.
what's poppycock. And there is that website called Snopes.
Right.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
That I don't know of any other like that, but there's that.
There's
Or checking stories, whether or not they're true.
PolitiFact is another one that.
And there's also a great chart that's been going around on Facebook that shows all the different media and kind of charts them where they lie, supposedly objectively, which is an interesting chart to find. I don't know what that's under. I'm going to take 1 second because I have to read this every 30 minutes. And so, Sally, I'm going to give you some news that's really a fact. The National Weather Service has issued a wind advisory, which is in effect from 10 p.m. Wednesday to 3 a.m. Friday. So it's in effect right now. Southerly winds of 15 to 30 miles per hour with local gusts to over 40 miles per hour in lower elevation locations are expected. Gusts to over 50 miles per hour for higher elevations are possible, and there is a potential for downed trees and power lines, plus difficult driving conditions. And also, do not listen to Fox News while you're driving. No, that's just me. I'm just teasing.
Little editorializing there.
So so when we're concentrating on what's coming down the pike, all these daily sort of wake-up calls, instead of reorganizing the Democratic Party or creating a third party, we're being distracted from our own organization. We're defending against his edicts instead of creating a base for something that's actually going to beat him in 4 years' time.
And that's what I think we need to be looking at.
Right.
Well, Sally, thank you for calling in. We've got another caller that just called in.
Thank you.
So do you have any closing words?
No, except to make phone calls to, I guess, our representatives and senators, even though they are Democratic, just to keep doing that. And to be very specific about what it is we are asking them to do.
Good idea.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sally.
Caller, you're on the air. What's your name?
This is Andy.
Hello, Andy.
Hey.
Good day.
Hey, Robin, at swingleft.org, I messaged that to you yesterday.
Oh.
That organization
And I obviously didn't look at it yet.
was started by a very old friend of mine, and some of her friends got it together. So it's from, it's very interesting. I like what they're doing. So,
have you watched your Fox News today?
no, I frankly, I avoid it until you come home, and then...
Then you leave the room.
So, one of my biggest concerns, I don't hear anybody really addressing, we have a huge number of people in this country who feel disenfranchised.
Don't say that word huge anymore.
Huge.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. A huge number in this country.
Who feel disenfranchised.
Yes.
The almost 50% of eligible voters who did not vote. And that, along with another thread, really, really disturbs me. And that is, I mentioned this yesterday, that, we are still paying the price in the world for the appeasement and willful ignorance of what happened in Europe in the 30s. And it can happen very fast. I think, it took the fascist movement there 10, 15 years to really gain full momentum and control. With the media and the way things happen here and the sloganeering and the fear-mongering and all of that, it could happen a lot faster here. I'm not positive that we've got 4 years, So I'm very fearful of this. Perhaps it's because I'm getting older, but, I think the media is getting it wrong. I think that they're playing into the game. I liked what Gail had to say about people connecting on the issues. But we have to find ways to connect everybody. The issues that Mr. Trump won on are real issues. He's blowing smoke at people the way he's proposing to resolve them, but it struck home with enough people to get him elected.
Mm-hmm. Very good point.
And the Democratic Party is moribund. I mean, they're broken.
Oh, they're as responsible for this as anybody.
They are as responsible, and there is a gap of leadership in our country. The Democrats don't have a good leader, and it's not a leader; it's a group of leaders.
Our bench is very shallow, and not many young people on it in the Democratic Party.
Mm.
Right. So, in my view, we have to engage
everyone
in very serious, thoughtful outreach, and frankly, we have to use some of the same tools that have been used against us.
As Steve was saying, and Paul, like what the Tea Party did.
Yeah, and I'll respectfully disagree with Paul about decisions, actions being taken based on facts. My experience of life is that people take actions based on emotion, and this was highly. This has been reported on quite a bit in that people will make decisions against their own self-interest because of their alignments, because of their affiliations.
Yeah.
So, if you are, even if you're progressive leaning and you're in a...
Andy, your phone is breaking up. So I apologize, but I think we need to go to our next caller.
Okay, bye.
Thank you, Andy.
Thank you.
Bye.
Yeah, the
caller.
groupthink, right? I mean, groupthink is thinking along with your tribe, going along with your tribe because you're comfortable with.
And it's kind of hardwired into humans.
Sure.
We've got a new caller. Caller, what's your name?
And I think let's just say officially, Robin likes me better, Andy. So, my name is Charles, and I live in beautiful Marshall. I'm sorry I couldn't get the website to work, so I wasn't able to listen to most of the show. But my 2 cents would be just a reflection. If you want to read about this, you can. It came up in an interview I did with Paul Fenn for the Point Raised Light, and it's also from an essay by Walter Benjamin, his reflections on Paul Clay's painting The Angelus Novus, which is that, very briefly, the bad news is the good news. And our perception of what's wrong is actually where we can begin to think about what to do. And thinking, I think, is really important. What I notice in a lot of this talk is action. Now, action, another thing you can read if you want, is Umberto Essay's essay on fascism and what it is. It has an obsession with action. So I see act all over the place, which I think just boils down to maybe progressive fascism is what's being called for. So if the opponent is intolerance, we're going to have progressive intolerance, like we had down there in Berkeley, where some idiot was supposed to speak, but that wasn't even allowed, right? Because people wanted to smash some buildings, which I'm for,
That's an interesting point, Charles, because that was in the news today, that Trump has pulled federal funding from UC Berkeley because the students demonstrated against Milo, and I can never say his last name. It's Yiannopoulos or something like that, who is, pretty, by my own standards, someone that I find very unsavory. And, but yet to not allow him to speak. I mean, even when the primaries and everything was going on and protesters showed up and Trump wasn't able to speak some places, that bothered me because I felt like everyone should have the right to speak. So, Charles, do you feel like that's been an issue among the progressives for quite some time?
Well, of course. I mean, and okay, basically you have, the two political parties, which are both Wall Street neoliberal parties in their economics and their foreign policy, and one of them, the distinction, is for intolerance, right? Is against multiculturalism, is against diversity, and the other one, the Democratic Party, is again same Wall Street neoliberal kind of neocon people, whatever term you want to put on them, but they're for diversity and they're for multiculturalism. And if you have to choose between the two of them, as we do, I think it would be wise to choose the one that is for diversity, right? And broadly speaking, that's much more the world we want to live in. But in terms of if you want to change the kind of problems that this country has, you're not going to find it.
You have to dump the neocons because they're the ones that brought us to this point.
Well, so I mean, here's the thing: nobody would connect in their mind, or I don't see people connecting their mind. For 8 years, Obama carries out this insane drone war. Tens of thousands of bombs dropped every year, and this causes a massive refugee crisis. And
extrajudicial.
How mean Trump is. He's not going to let these refugees in. Everybody's very angry about it, and they go and protest. And again, go protest.
But we created the refugees as a country. Yeah,
you can't be for American empire and against racism. It's not possible. Or against Trump's meaniness, right? His lack of tolerance. And so, what it means to be tacitly for empire is to be dependent upon these trade structures and economic structures that we all participate in, to be beholden to these financial indices, which, how many people of West Marin are portfolio people who live off dividends? I would imagine a great number of them. And then downstream from that, everyone who's wired into this economy, and that's everyone, has a connection to this problem. And so the thing to do is not act, the thing to do is think. And I would say what Benjamin is saying, we can see the past. And what we're seeing is all of this terrible destruction. And most people, because they think feeling bad is bad for you, there's a book called The Burnout Society that was published by Stanford University Press. Every once in a while they publish something good. And it talks about how in modern societies we can't deal with negativity. And so we have an exhaustion that comes from an excess of positivity. I mean, this is a problem. But again, the bad news is the good news. If you know these things, then you can begin to construct what might be a different path. You can't get it by living in the present. That's just staring at your feet. You can't get it by facing the future. That's just action. Those people are crazy. I don't care if they're the fascists or the progressive fascists. Don't face into the future with them. They're going off a cliff. Looking into the past gives you an idea of what might be possible in terms of changing. And so, deal with it. Deal with the negativity. I just got off a call. I have 2 hours with activists in Western Massachusetts who are trying to think their way through how they're going to respond to climate change in a way that's meaningful. And you have to have a positive program. I mean, the thing is, we oppose Keystone XL, you oppose Dakota Access. As long as there is this demand for those fuels, you are going to get another pipeline and another pipeline and another pipeline. We're dealing with the bankruptcy of resistance as well. So it's good to try and go and tell people, or have a demonstration and say, to express opposition. I wouldn't say that people shouldn't do that, but it's been about 40 years in the United States before any mass demonstration had a significant political impact. And in fact, you can recite the speeches without even going. It's so great to see today all the people, black and white, male and female,
all together.
We're going to send a message. Well, we don't send a message. It doesn't have that kind of impact.
We just provided a photo op for Trump to say, see how many people were here, and just took the picture the next day.
I guess. I don't know. If people are meeting new people, if they're starting to think about problems in new ways, if this is a source of solidarity and that's helpful, I wouldn't condemn it. And so that's great. There are lots of people who went. But in terms of responding to what's going on, there is no role, really, for the individual or the community in that kind of political theater.
So, Charles, I have a question for you. Steve Bannon, who is the scary person in the room to me, is a self-professed Leninist and wants to see the destruction of everything because everything's so messed up. So are you saying you agree with that viewpoint?
No, I would just say you can fear national-level politics. You just can't do anything about it. And It's good to fear it. It's good to have a defensive posture against it, like you should have had, or one should have had, rather, with Obama. And now everybody suddenly discovered that the federal government is up to all sorts of horrible things.
But they're still covering it up. Nobody – if I talk negative about Obama, outside of this room, I'm afraid to go to my car now.
Well, he's cool. He was very cool.
Because it's about identity.
Yeah.
But you're not mentioning Trump.
Ultimately, in essence, it is just something you are.
You're not mentioning Trump, though. We've got a real problem on our hands.
Well, we had a real problem with our hands with Obama, but nobody could see it because he had the right identity.
Right, so this is a good thing, actually. This is bringing it...
Never go so far, be so glib as to say...
all out in the open.
Good thing, but again... think. If this is beginning the process of looking at who we actually are and what our shared history is, and then what might become possible in terms of a response or in terms of trying to build the sort of world that we want, that'd be a good thing. And Leninism, I assume what he means by Leninism is just that a vanguard, a small group of people could take power and reorganize the whole society from the top.
Which is basically his stance, which, we might not be upset if he was a raging left-wing liberal.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Charles. We're going to have to go. So.
Oh, dear. Well,
thank you so much.
You can call me offline.
Thank you.
Okay. And a couple of announcements, too. There's ACLU meeting at the Dance Palace today at 4 p.m.
Oh.
Yes, and the next meeting of local Resist Trump movement is on Saturday, February 11th at 3 p.m. And I just wanted
at the Dance Palace.
At the Dance Palace. And I just wanted to read a couple of lines from an article that's in the paper and an email here from Mark Dowie. This is our Berlusconi moment. As Silvio did in Italy, Trump will leave scars lasting decades, but by doing exactly what so many people in this and thousands of other communities are doing to resist this frightening administration, enlightened democracy and the good values it protects will prevail, and America might actually become great again. There you go. We've got a caller coming in, but we can't do it right now. Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
This was Let's Talk, and the opinions expressed on this show are the opinions of the co-hosts and callers, and not those of KWMR.
Or its board of directors, underwriters, or members. Thanks, and listen up for us next week. We'll be talking about something fascinating yet again.
Yes.
Yay.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.